Do you keep running out of things to say in Daygame sets? You're stacking, trying to tease and storytell, asking her questions, but she just isn't giving you anything, and sooner or later you run out of things to say. What if I told you you can learn to come up with interesting topics to talk about and get her to invest in a conversation even when she wasn't that responsive in the beginning, all while doing this in a way so you would never run out of things to say? Even better than that, you can learn to do this in a logical, step-by-step way, sort of like a flowchart. If she doesn't respond to your stack, do this. If you're teasing and storytelling and she's not giving you anything, do that. Well, that's what I'll teach you to do in this podcast episode. How this podcast episode is organized. Everything is based on the London Daygame model. We'll be talking about concepts like stacking, teasing, three things technique, and similar ideas I've explained in my free course, The Structured Natural Approach, on daygamecourses.com. I'll try to explain these things in simple terms, but if you don't understand some of the concepts I'm talking about, just go check out the free course after watching this video. What we'll be covering: advanced stacking hacks to easily find interesting topics to talk about, for example, going to the other extreme, a technique you can apply when she's not giving you much when you're stacking. Copy-paste version of the three things technique you can use with any profession, and what to do when she's interrupting you when you're doing the three things technique. Your dream must be technique, which gets girls engaging even when they're not giving you anything in response to the three things technique. And an easy trick to understand whether you should keep talking about the same topic or move to something else in your daygame conversations. There is no magic formula. These are intermediate and advanced level hacks, but it doesn't mean they will work on all girls. The goal isn't to get all girls want to talk to you, but to get more girls want to stay and chat with you for longer. If you'll get twice as many girls interested in staying in and chatting with you for more than just a few seconds, you'll also get twice as many girls giving you their numbers, coming out on dates, and sleeping with you. Simple math. Everything has been tested over thousands of approaches. I've been coaching Daygame for more than 7 years, and all techniques I'm talking about in this podcast episode have been tested by my students over thousands and thousands of approaches. This is the best stuff I've found to solve this specific problem over all these years of coaching. Why am I giving this away for free? Having worked with daygamers for so many years, I found 5 reasons why guys are getting inconsistent and unpredictable results. Not knowing the right techniques, not having enough information about daygame, that's just 1 out of 5 problems. To get laid with beautiful and interesting girls, you need to solve all 5 problems, so I don't really care about giving away my best techniques for free. And I'll tell you about all 5 reasons why guys get inconsistent and unpredictable results in daygame at the end of this podcast episode. And now let's jump in. First, we're going to look at how the whole sequence works together. And if this doesn't make any sense yet, don't worry, it will by the end of this podcast episode. First, you do a strong stop and a good opener that leads to stacking with A or B to find a topic to talk about. If she doesn't give you anything you can work with in the response to the stack, you go to the other extreme. If she gives you a broad topic, you narrow it down by doing 1 more stack. When you get a topic, you use the 3 things technique to build attraction and to get her to invest in a conversation. If she doesn't give you anything in response to the 3 things technique, you can use the your dream must be technique. You keep talking about the topic as long as she keeps giving you new information. And when she responds to you without giving any new piece of information, you move on to the next conversation topic. This probably made no sense to you, so let's unpack everything step by step so you can get more hook points, numbers, dates, and lays. Let's start with advanced stacking hacks to find good topics to talk about. To get to the hook point, we need to use different teasing and storytelling techniques to make her attracted to us. But to start doing that, we need to find out something about her. What does she do? Where is she from? Why is she here? What is she up to right now? We need a conversation topic that we can later tease and storytell about. You can simply ask, what do you do? Where are you from? But that's really boring, and it's a sure way to get the conversation in before it has even started. Because of that, we use assumption stacking, or stacking for short. We're just throwing out assumptions about her, guessing, cold reading, call it whatever you want to call it. I've covered it in a separate video on Module 1 on the Structured Natural Approach course that's available for free on daygamecourses.com. An example would be you look very artistic, like a painter or someone who plays a guitar in a rock band. And you might have noticed I gave 2 options, A or B, a painter or someone who plays a guitar in a rock band. That's because I'm twice as likely to guess correctly, and even if I'm wrong, she's much more likely to respond by telling what does she actually do instead of just saying no. I don't know why that's the case, but that's just something I've noticed working really good for myself, my wings, and the students I've worked with. Going to the other extreme. What if you have a great stack, like the one we just talked about? You look very artistic, like someone who makes weird art and sells it on Etsy or plays a guitar in a rock band. You deliver it perfectly, but it's completely off, and she says, no, not at all. Many guys at this point will start to look for another topic to talk about. Where is she from? What is she up to right now? Or something else. There's so many topics you can talk about. But if you give up instantly after she doesn't give you much in response to your artistic stack, you're giving up the topic of what does she do. And if you keep giving up topics, you're pretty soon will run out of things to say. But there is a simple solution. You can go to the other extreme, from her being artistic to her being serious. For example, oh my god, don't tell me you're one of those super serious lawyers or accountants. And notice how it's a bit of a push? Oh my god, don't tell me. This is highly likely to be correct, or she'll simply tell you what she does. If it doesn't work, move on to a different topic. Some girls just don't want to talk about their work. Which brings us to the next topic. Don't stack about her job. What should you be stacking about in a day game set? There are plenty of options. The standard ones are her work, where is she from, why is she here, what is she up to right now, her style, etc. Work is the most boring topic to talk about. Everyone asks her what does she do. All her online dating matches ask that. Everyone she meets her asks that. Is the most boring topic you can start talking about. Or maybe she works in a pretty shitty job and doesn't want that to be the first thing you find out about her. Don't use work as your first stack. Stack about everything else. For example, her looking artistic. And if she isn't artistic and you go to the other extreme, just like we just talked, and you find out what she does for a living that way, that is totally fine. Talking about her job is not the problem. That being the first thing you ask or stack about, that's the problem. Narrowing down broad topics. Sometimes when stacking, you'll get topics that are too broad to use the three things technique. For example, she tells you she's coming from work. You can't just say, when I think about people who have work, I think about three things, A, B, C. But if you find out what does she actually do, this becomes much easier. You can narrow down broad topics by stacking again. For example, she says she's coming from work. You can say, yeah, you look kind of creative, like someone who works in marketing or design. And you find out she works, for example, in a bar, and you can start going into storytelling. Oh yeah, I have a few friends who work in a bar, and I learned three things about you guys, and you go into your three things story. Some examples of broad topics you need to narrow down are she's coming from work, she's a student, she's a tourist, or she's not from here. If my students are doing these things the right way, these stacking hacks are more than enough to find interesting topics to talk about. If you're doing this and this doesn't work, you're doing something wrong, and it's likely you're not seeing your mistakes. More on how to solve that at the end of the video. Make storytelling easy to learn. One of the last guys I coached was very good at finding topics to talk about. For example, she's from Spain or she's a lawyer. But then he would go into regular boring conversations about these topics, and all of a sudden the girl remembered she has a boyfriend, she has to go, or another excuse to end the conversation. If you do a good day game stop and opener, that might increase the attraction to 3 out of 10, maybe. And that gives you no more than 30 seconds to increase attraction even more. That's why we find a topic to talk about quickly and launch into teasing and storytelling. If in the next 30 seconds you increase the attraction even more, she likes you and she will stay around. Whereas if it stays around a 3, she's much more likely to go away. And if you start having a boring conversation, the attraction will drop and she will instantly remember she has to go. But after the student learned a few basic storytelling techniques, all of a sudden more girls wanted to stay and chat with him. He was able to reach more hook points, after which the conversation becomes much easier. It's not rocket science to do well with girls that already like you. That's why he was doing so good with certain types of girls but terrible with everyone else. Once he improved his storytelling, all of a sudden he started getting numbers from all types of girls. Storytelling is one of the hardest skills to learn in day game, but it's one of the most important ones. Once you learn to play around with different topics that come up in a conversation, you can talk about anything, make her attracted to you, and lead the conversation where you want it to go. For example, start talking about more adventurous topics to see whether it's a good idea to maybe go on an instant date and try to attempt a same-day lay. Copy-paste version of the three things technique you can use with any profession. The three things technique is the oldest storytelling hack I know, and it's perfect. When you find a topic to talk about, for example, she's a lawyer, as a beginner you might say, when I think about lawyers, I think about three things, and then you go into your story. Or I used to work with a bunch of lawyers and I learned that you guys, and again you go into your story using three things technique. And again, you can learn more about this technique if you don't know what I'm talking about in Module 2 of the Structured Natural Approach course for free on daygamecourses.com. In the beginning, it's hard to come up with three interesting things to talk about on all the random topics that could come up. So I'll give you a copy-paste version of this technique that you can use for any profession. Let's use the lawyer as an example. I have a few lawyer friends and I learned that you guys, thing 1, need to study so much because there is so much to learn. Thing 2, you need to work so hard if you want to get to the top and make the real money because it's so competitive. Thing 3, I once went out with a bunch of my lawyer friends and the night started kind of easy and classy, but by the end of the night, oh my God, we were having so many drinks and some people were dancing on a table. I can't go out with you guys. And then you end the story by saying that must be you to encourage her to answer. In the beginning, it's very hard for your brain to remember what you have to say, so improvisation is almost impossible. So the goal in the beginning is to learn to deliver a copy-paste story like this. So you start with that, and then when you're able to deliver a copy-paste story perfectly, that's when you start adding a little bit of improvisation. Maybe 90% of the story is copy-paste, 10% is improvised. Once you're comfortable with that, you move up to 20% improvisation. For example, thing 1, you need to study so much because there is so much to learn, and unless you have master's degree, all you can do is just make copies of documents for everyone else in the office. Thing 2, if you want to work in one of the biggest law firms and make the real money, you have to work crazy hours. It's wild. And thing 3, but you guys know how to have fun. I know you don't go to nightclubs, but those small house parties, like with the fancy cocktails you throw in someone's apartments, they sometimes end up pretty crazy. And again, you end the story with that must be you to encourage her to invest. Oftentimes when my students are starting to learn this technique, their day game falls apart and nothing works. It's hard enough to remember what to say, but when you start to improvise, it becomes a complete shit show. It just isn't landing, and the results actually get worse in the beginning. But if they're doing this correctly, then in around 50 approaches, they start to make sense of all of these things. It starts to click, and when it finally comes back together, their game comes back together at a much higher level. Storytelling is one of the hardest skills to learn in Daygame, but it's one of the most important ones. Because of this, in my online coaching program, we usually spend multiple months of one-on-one work just on this topic alone. The story has to be about her. The last guy I coached misunderstood storytelling. He thought that you need to find a topic to talk about and then tell an interesting story on that topic about yourself to make a girl attracted to you. And that's absolutely wrong because she doesn't care about you yet. When you find out she's a lawyer and you go into your story, I used to work with a bunch of lawyer friends and I learned that you guys, and then you go into your story, the story isn't about your lawyer friends. It's not about you. The story about your lawyer friends is just a medium to deliver a story about her. Yes, exactly. It's not about the things that your lawyer friends do. It's about things that you're assuming she does. The story about your lawyer friends is just a way to make some guesses about what her life as a lawyer is like, and that way it's easy for her to start responding and invest in a conversation. What to do when she interrupts you during the three things technique. The last student I coached also misunderstood this thing. You're delivering your three things technique story, but then she interrupts you to say something about the first thing you said. Should you let her interrupt and then talk about the thing she just gave you, or should you continue with your story? Storytelling has three goals. First of all, use small teases to spark her emotions and thus make her more attracted to you. Second, show that you're an interesting person to talk about. And third, most importantly, make her invest in a conversation. When you find out she's a lawyer and you start telling a story using the 3 things technique and she interrupts you after the first thing and starts investing on her opinions about lawyers, she's investing in a conversation. So shut the fuck up and let her talk. Talk about whatever new information she just gave you and then get back to your story. You tell the first thing, she interrupts you. Talk about the first thing a little bit. Run out of things to say? Okay, move on to thing number 2. Then thing number 3. Again, she starts into investing after the third thing. Great, chat about that a little bit. You tell the first thing and she interrupts you. Okay, chat about the first thing a little bit, run out of things to say. Okay, move on to the second thing, move on to the third thing. She's responding and investing on the third thing. Great, chat about that for a bit. But what about if you deliver your wonderful story using the 3 things technique and she just responds with, yes, that's me. You can't really do much with that, but of course, I have another technique for you just for this situation. Your dream must beat technique. If you use the 3 things technique and she gives you a very short response, it doesn't mean you have to move on to the next conversation topic, because if you keep jumping from topic to topic, very soon you will run out of things to say. So there is another technique you can use in this scenario. To stay on the same example, let's say she's a lawyer, you go into your story, you say, when I think about lawyers, I think about 3 things, thing 1, thing 2, thing 3, and then she just responds with, yes. You can't do much with an answer like that, but you can say something along the lines, your dream must be to open the biggest law firm in New York City. You're going to have your own skyscraper taller than the Empire State Building with your name on top of it. Of course, replace the city name with whichever city you're in. And this works for any profession. She's a dentist. Your dream must be to open the biggest dentistry clinic in Berlin, and you're going to have your own skyscraper with your name on top of it, taller than the TV tower in the Alexanderplatz. And if she still isn't giving you anything, it's time to get back to stacking and find another topic to talk about. When to move on to the next topic in a day game conversation. How long can you keep talking about the same topic in a day game conversation? Let's say you did the 3 things technique, you did the your dream must beat technique. Is there something else you can do, or should you move on to the next topic? Follow this simple rule. Each time she gives you new information, use that information to keep the conversation going. Continuing the lawyer example, she says she works for an environmental firm. Great. Accuse her of protecting people who chain themselves up to trees to prevent them from being cut down. She responds with, no, I usually deal with paperwork from governments. Okay, accuse her for having a stack of papers so high she can't even see her office door, or something similar. But once her response doesn't include any new information on the topic, it's time to find another topic and move on. Find something else. Where is she from? Why is she here? What is she up to right now? Etc. When using this rule, you will know whether you're jumping from topic to topic or you're staying on topics for too long. There's no point milking a dead topic. If you do, the conversation is going to become stale, and pretty soon you'll hear, I have to go. Keep the conversation engaging and fun. Keep the line tight. Learning and following these rules will make learning storytelling and teasing much easier, and you'll get more hook points. At which point the conversation becomes so much more easier because you can just relax and have a normal conversation. Get to know each other, and that's it. 5 reasons daygamers get inconsistent and unpredictable results. In the beginning, I told you that after 7 years of coaching daygame, I've found 5 reasons why daygamers are getting inconsistent and unpredictable results. Not knowing the right information or not having enough information is just 1 out of 5 problems. To get laid with beautiful and interesting women, you need to solve all 5 of these problems. So let's look at them. First is consistency. We all know it's important to go out a lot, but sooner or later something will come up that will stop you from daygaming enough. Maybe, the autumn weather puts you in a bad mood, you lose a regular busy period at work, travel, etc. Each time you take a break, approach anxiety comes back with a full swing and you forget things you've learned much faster than you would imagine. So basically, you're not progressing, you're staying in the same spot unless you're very consistent with your day game for a minimum of 6 to 12 months. Second problem, using the wrong day game model. I've talked to hundreds, probably thousands of day gamers over the years, and I always pay attention to two things. First of all, what are their results in day game? And second, what are their opinions about day game? What approach, what model of day game they are using? This includes what books they've read, what channels they're watching, etc. And if their results are bad, I don't really care about their opinions because they're obviously wrong. But when guys are getting good results in day game, I pay a lot of attention to what model they're using and what beliefs they have. And over the years, I realized that almost all of the guys who are doing good are using the same approach to day game, the same model. Third problem is not seeing your mistakes. Following the right model doesn't necessarily mean you'll become good at day game. Actually, I quickly realized that more content, however good it is not the solution to get good in day game. Most guys already know all the theory needed to get numbers, dates, and lays. The problem is the guys are not recognizing the mistakes they're making in their day game sets, or maybe they're recognizing mistakes, but they don't know which of all 10 mistakes they have to fix first. Problem number 4, bad vibe. When learning structured day game, guys sometimes become a little bit robotic, and that leads to them having a bad vibe. Even though they're doing everything correctly, it just doesn't land. Learning to balance good vibe and good day game technique is the key to success in day game. And reason number 5, some guys are just not bringing any value to the table. Maybe you're a young dude who hasn't found his place in life yet. You haven't established yourself in your work or business. I'm not saying you have to be a highly successful man to do good in day game, but if you're still flipping burgers, you're gonna have harder time day gaming. The most important of these 5 reasons why guys are getting inconsistent and unpredictable results is not seeing your mistakes, because it's a meta problem. It could mean that you're not seeing your technical mistakes in your day game sets, or it could mean that you're focusing on completely the wrong things. For example, you think your problem is technique, where in reality your problem is your bad vibe. Or maybe you're just blaming everything on your SMV, but when in reality your day game opener is shit and you're using the wrong day game model. That's why the most important part I do with my online coaching students is monthly one-on-one coaching calls. A student sends in a few recorded sets, we hop on a call, listen to them together, I point out what they're doing good, what their biggest mistakes are, and how exactly they should go about fixing them over the next 50 to 100 approaches. He spends the next month focusing on these things. A month later, we hop on a call again, listen to some new recordings, and find the next things to focus on, and so we repeat month after month. If you want me to listen to your day game sets, point out your biggest mistakes, and tell you how exactly you can fix them over the next 50 to 100 approaches, then I will do that with an 80% discount for only €100 for one call for the first 3 guys who sign up. You can find out more information by clicking the link in description titled "Get twice as many numbers and dates." That's it for this time. See you in the next podcast episode. Ciao, guys.